The chamber was impossible to comprehend at first glance. It stretched so far into the darkness of space that the far walls disappeared into shadow. Transparent aluminum panels formed a dome that showed the stars beyond and inside this massive structure. Thousands upon thousands of beings waited in absolute silence. Ambassador Marcus Webb had seen many impressive things in his 50 years of life, but nothing compared to this moment. He stood alone on a circular platform that floated in the exact center of the Grand Council chamber. Below him, 5,000 species sat in curved rows that spiraled outward like a galaxy. Above him, holographic screens displayed his face to every corner of the room. He was one human, facing the combined judgment of the most powerful governing body in known space. The silence broke when High Chancellor Vrix rose from his elevated seat. The Althean was tall and thin, with skin that shimmered like oil on water. His species had ruled the council for 12,000 years, and his voice carried the weight of that authority. Ambassador Webb of Earth, Vrix began, and his words echoed through translation devices in 5,000 languages. You stand accused of crimes against galactic order. Your species has violated the expansion protocols by colonizing 40 worlds in less than 2 centuries. You have developed weapons technology without council approval. You have refused to share military data as required by membership treaties. How do you answer these charges? Marcus looked up at the Chancellor. Around him, holographic evidence hung in the air like burning accusations. Images of human colonies, schematics of human warships, trade agreements signed without council oversight. Each piece of evidence glowed red, marking humanity as guilty before he had spoken a single word. I answer, Marcus said calmly, that Earth has broken no laws. A wave of sound rippled through the chamber. It was not quite laughter, not quite outrage, but something between the two. Delegates from hundreds of species shifted in their seats. Some made sounds that translation devices rendered as scoffs or hisses. Vrix raised one long hand for silence. You deny the evidence before you? I deny nothing, Marcus replied. The expansion protocols limit new species to 10 colonies in their first 5 centuries. We have 40 colonies. But those protocols were written 4,000 years ago for species that used slower-than-light travel. Humanity uses jump drives. We can reach distant stars in days, not decades. The spirit of the law was to prevent resource wars and territorial conflicts. We have caused neither. The law is the law, Vrix said coldly. It does not bend to convenience. Then perhaps the law should be updated to match reality, Marcus suggested. Another wave of sound, louder this time. Several delegates stood, shouting in languages that blended into an incomprehensible roar. Marcus stood perfectly still, his hands clasped behind his back. Waiting, it took nearly 5 minutes for order to be restored. Speak of updating laws, Vrix continued, his voice harder now, yet you refuse to follow current ones. You have weaponized technologies that the Council banned 3 centuries ago. Kinetic bombardment systems, autonomous combat drones, neural disruption fields. Do you deny this? We developed defensive technologies, Marcus said. We shared them with no one. We used them against no one. The ban on weapons research applies to offensive systems intended for conquest. Everything we built was for protection. Protection from whom? Demanded a delegate from the lower tiers. The speaker was a heavily armored creature whose species Marcus did not recognize. Who threatens you that you need such weapons? Marcus turned slowly, looking at the thousands of faces watching him. You do, he said simply. This council. You brought us here not to negotiate, but to demand our surrender. You want us to hand over our autonomy, our military, our right to govern ourselves? You call it membership. We call it subjugation, Ill erupted. Delegates were on their feet now, shouting, gesturing, their translation devices creating a storm of overlapping voices. Security drones moved toward the platform where Marcus stood, their weapons charging. Vrix slammed his staff against the floor 3 times, and the sound was amplified until it drowned out everything else. Order. We will have order. When silence finally returned, the Chancellor looked down at Marcus with something almost like pity. Ambassador Webb, this council has shown patience with your species. We welcomed you into galactic society. We offered you trade, knowledge, and protection. In return, we asked only that you follow the same rules that govern every other civilization. You have refused. Therefore, the council has reached a decision. Marcus felt his heart rate increase, but his face showed nothing. Earth must accept a council-appointed governor who will oversee all human military operations and colonial expansion. You will submit complete data on all weapon systems for council review. You will reduce your fleet to no more than 20 vessels. These terms are non-negotiable. You have 48 hours to agree, or Earth will be placed under complete quarantine. No trade, no travel. No communication with any council world. You will be isolated until you comply. The chamber went silent again. Every eye was on Marcus Webb, waiting to see him beg, to see him negotiate, to watch him try to buy time or seek compromise. Instead, Marcus reached into his jacket pocket. Security drones moved closer, weapons raised. But Marcus pulled out only a small black cube, no larger than a dice. He placed it on the platform in front of him and pressed the top. A holographic message erupted from the cube, expanding until it filled the air above the platform. It appeared in 5,000 languages simultaneously, each version perfectly translated. Impossible to misunderstand, the message read. Negotiation terminated. Humanity withdraws from council membership. Marcus looked up at Vrix one last time. We came here prepared to talk in good faith. But you made your position clear. You don't want partners. You want subjects? Earth will never be anyone's subject. He turned and walked toward the massive doors at the chamber's edge. Cannot simply leave. Vrix's voice boomed across the space, no longer calm, no longer controlled. No species abandons the council. You would make yourself outlaws. Enemies of every civilized world in the galaxy. Marcus reached the doors and paused. Without turning around, he spoke loud enough for every delegate to hear. We will manage fine. The doors opened before him, recognizing his diplomatic credentials one last time. As he stepped through, he heard Vrix shouting orders. Heard delegates screaming questions and demands. Heard the beginning of chaos would spread across the galaxy. The doors sealed behind him with a sound like thunder. Marcus. Webb walked down the empty corridor beyond, alone knowing that humanity had just changed the course of galactic history. Behind him, in the council chamber, 5,000 species tried to understand what had just happened. For 3,000 years, no one had ever walked away from the council until now. 2 days after Marcus Webb walked out of the council chamber, panic spread through the halls of galactic government like a virus. Junior analyst Cree had worked in the council archives for 30 years. Her species, the Hive Collective, were known for their attention to detail and their ability to process massive amounts of information. She had spent 3 decades cataloging trade agreements, border disputes, and diplomatic communications without ever finding anything unusual until now. She stood in the emergency security committee meeting, her forearms shaking as she presented her findings. Around the oval table sat the most powerful military and intelligence officials in council space. They had all ignored her reports for weeks. Now they had no choice but to listen. The humans, she said. Her voice translated into a chittering sound that the committee heard as words. Have been preparing for this moment for decades. High Chancellor Vrix, who had barely slept since the walkout, leaned forward. Explain. Cree activated the holographic display. Hundreds of glowing lines appeared, connecting Earth to distant points across the galaxy. These are what the humans called independent trade agreements. We allowed them because they seemed harmless. They were trading medical supplies, technology, agricultural equipment with frontier worlds. Planets outside council jurisdiction. You know this? Snapped Defense Coordinator Marn, a reptilian officer whose scales had turned to stress. Purple. What is your point? My point, Cree said, is that these were not just trade agreements. They were mutual defense pacts disguised as commercial contracts. The room went silent. Craig expanded the display. Fine print appeared, clauses buried in hundreds of pages of legal text. Every single agreement contained identical language in Section 47, subsection 12. Hidden among shipping schedules and tariff rates was a promise. If any signatory faced military aggression, all others would come to their defense. How many worlds signed these agreements? Vrix asked quietly. 318, Kree replied. As of this morning, the number hung in the air like a bomb. 300 worlds, Marn repeated. The humans allied with 300 worlds, and we noticed nothing? They were frontier planets, another committee member said. Barely developed. No military power. This changes nothing. Then the second bombshell hit. Admiral Thorne appeared on every major galactic news network at exactly the same moment. The broadcast reached council worlds, independent systems, and even isolated colonies on the galaxy's edge. There was no way to block no way to stop it. The humans had purchased airtime on every major network weeks ago. The contracts were ironclad. Thorne was a woman in her 60s, her hair gray, but her eyes sharp. She wore the dark blue uniform of the unified Earth fleet, and she stood on the bridge of a warship that gleamed with polished metal and active weapon systems. I am Admiral Helen Thorne, she began, her voice calm and professional. Commander of Earth's military forces. The Council has demanded we share our military data. We refused. But in the interest of transparency, I am sharing it now. With everyone, data began scrolling across screens. Ship classifications, weapon specifications, personnel numbers. Everything the Council had demanded, now given freely to the entire galaxy. The unified Earth fleet operates 176 warships, Thorne continued. We have 43,000 active military personnel. Our weapons include kinetic bombardment platforms, directed energy systems, and autonomous defensive drones. This information is now public record. In the Security Committee room, Marn laughed. It was a harsh, satisfied sound. 176 ships. We have over 4,000. This proves they are no threat. But Thorne was not finished. However, she said, and something in her tone made everyone listening lean closer, Earth has not been keeping these technologies to ourselves. Over the past 50 years, we have shared defensive systems with our trade partners. Shield generators. Point defense networks. Sensor arrays. These 318 worlds now possess technology that many council members do not. The Security Committee watched in horror as Thorne displayed test footage. A human shield generator deflecting plasma fire that would have destroyed most council ships. A point defense system tracking and eliminating hundreds of incoming missiles simultaneously. Sensor arrays that could detect vessels across entire star systems. We did not build an empire, Thorne said. We built a network of mutual defense. And as of today, Earth is invoking those agreements. Any attack on human interests will be considered an attack on all signatory worlds. The broadcast ended. In the council chamber, emergency sessions began immediately. Delegates who had cheered Marcus Webb's departure 2 days ago now looked worried. Trade Minister Lyra of the Merchant Guilds was the first to fully understand the economic implications. She stood before the Economic Council, her tentacles writhing with agitation. We need to discuss the embargo. What embargo? Asked a delegate. The human embargo, Lyra replied. It went into effect 1 hour ago. Earth has ceased all trade with council member states. So what? Another delegate said. We traded with them for 2 centuries. We managed fine before they arrived. Lyra pulled up a list that made the color drain from several faces. Human medical nanites are currently saving lives on 417 council worlds. Their fusion cores power stations on 612 planets. Their atmospheric processors are maintaining breathable air on 209 terraformed colonies. Their data crystals store 70% of the Council's own records. The room went very quiet. How long? Someone asked. Until those systems need maintenance or replacement. The nanites will fail in 3 months, Lyra said. The fusion cores have a 6-month lifespan. The processors will last perhaps a year, and they are all coded with human security protocols. No one else can repair them, and we force them to provide maintenance, a delegate suggested. We send the enforcement fleet to Earth and make them honor their contracts. Their contracts, Lyra said quietly, all contain a clause allowing termination if either party withdraws from council membership. The humans wrote that clause into every agreement. We approved it without reading carefully. It is legal. It is binding. And it is now active. High Chancellor Vrix called for a vote that evening. The motion was simple. Send the enforcement fleet to blockade Earth. Force them to return to the council. Show the galaxy that no one could simply walk away. The vote was underway when every light in the council chamber died. Emergency power failed. Communication arrays went dark. Backup systems struggled to engage, and when they finally did, there was a message burned into every screen, every display, every holographic projector in the entire building. The message was short. This is just a demonstration. Do not test us further. Rick stared at the words, his shimmer skin flickering with barely controlled rage. The humans had been inside council systems. They had access to the most secure networks in galactic space. The military files, the intelligence databases, the private communications of every council member. How long had they been watching? What else had they learned? Security Chief Dorn pulled up diagnostic reports with shaking hands. The intrusion, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, shows access dating back 14 months. They have been in our systems for over a year. What did they take? Vrix demanded. Dorn looked up, his eyes wide. Everything. They copied everything. The vote on the enforcement fleet was postponed. How could they make military decisions when the enemy might know every plan before it was executed? Marcus Webb sat in his quarters on the human diplomatic ship, now safely in neutral space. He watched the news feeds showing chaos spreading through council chambers. Member worlds arguing, trade networks collapsing. Security forces discovering breaches they could not explain, his second-in-command. Ambassador Rachel Torres entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. The demonstration worked, she said. Marcus nodded. Phase 1 complete. They know we were prepared. They know we have allies. They know we can reach into their most secure systems. He sipped his coffee. Now comes the hard part, which is showing them that we are not their enemy, Marcus said. We just refuse to be their subjects. There is a difference. Rachel sat down across from him. Think they will see it that way? Marcus smiled slightly. They will, eventually. Right now, they are scared. Scared people do not think clearly. We give them time. We let them realize that we are not attacking anyone. We are just defending our right to exist on our own terms. And if they attack anyway. Marcus looked out at the stars beyond the viewport. Then 318 worlds stand with us. And the council learns what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. The fractures began within a week. Senator Dax stood in the council chamber, his blue skin flushed darker with emotion. He represented the Outer Territories, a collection of 40 frontier worlds that had joined the council seeking protection and trade opportunities. Now he was about to commit political suicide. I will not vote to condemn Earth, he said loudly, his voice cutting through the murmurs of other delegates. I will not support military action against humanity. The chamber fell silent. High Chancellor Vrix stared down at Dax from his elevated platform. Senator, you understand what you are saying. I understand perfectly, Dax replied. 3 years ago, a plague swept through my homeworld of Tila's Prime. 17 million people were dying. Council aid arrived for months after we requested it. By then, it was too late for millions. Do you know who saved us? Human doctors. They arrived within 2 weeks. They brought medical nanites that stopped the plague in its tracks. They asked for nothing in return. They just helped. That is irrelevant to this discussion, Vrix began, but Dax cut him off. It is completely relevant. You want me to declare war on the people who saved my world? You want me to support a blockade that will kill millions on other planets that depend on human technology? I refuse. Other delegates began shouting. Some supported Dax. Others called him a traitor. The noise built until Vrix had to slam his staff again to restore order. But the damage was done. Dax was not alone. Over the following days, more senators spoke up. The merchant guilds formally protested the embargo, stating that it was destroying their economy. 12 industrial worlds threatened to leave the council entirely if military action was taken against. Earth, the unity that had defined the Galactic Council for 3,000 years, was crumbling. Meanwhile, Ambassador Rachel Torres stood on the bridge of the human flagship Liberty. Addressing a live broadcast that reached across the galaxy, she was younger than Marcus Webb, but her voice carried the same calm confidence. To all worlds watching, she began, Earth is establishing the Free Commerce Alliance. This is not a government. This is not a rival to the Council. It is simply an agreement between sovereign worlds to trade freely, defend each other, and respect each other's independence. Oh, she paused, letting the words sink in. Any world can join, regardless of size, power, or location. There are only 3 requirements. You agree to free trade with other members, you agree to mutual defense, and you agree to respect the sovereignty of all members. No forced technology sharing. No mandatory laws. No governors imposed from outside. Just cooperation between equals. Applications began arriving within hours. 50 worlds applied the first day. 100 by the end of the week. By day 10, 200 worlds had formally requested membership in the Alliance. The Council could no longer ignore the threat. High Chancellor Vrix authorized the deployment of the Enforcement Fleet, 1,000 warships. The largest military force assembled in over a century. Their mission? Blockade Earth and force humanity's surrender. Fleet Commander Zell was a career military officer from the Draken species. He had commanded fleets for 40 years and never lost a battle. He did not belly. Even politics or diplomacy. He believed in following orders. His orders were clear. Establish a blockade around Earth. Allow nothing in or out. Wait for the humans to beg for terms. The fleet entered what had been neutral space, expecting an easy deployment. Instead, they found a wall. 300 ships waited for them. Not just human vessels, but ships from dozens of different species. Merchant freighters that had been retrofitted with weapons, colony defense boats, mining ships equipped with industrial lasers. And at the center of this strange fleet, 20 actual warships flying the colors of worlds that had joined the Free Commerce Alliance. Zell stared at his tactical display in disbelief. How did they assemble this force so quickly? His tactical officer, a young Draken named Ren, pulled up communication intercepts. Sir, these ships were already in position. They have been gathering for weeks. The humans knew we were coming. Of course they did, Zell thought bitterly. They had been inside Council systems for over a year. They probably knew about the fleet deployment before some of his own officers did. A communication request came through. Zell accepted it, expecting to see a human admiral. Instead, Marcus Webb appeared on screen, standing on the bridge of a single human frigate. Commander Zell, Marcus said pleasantly, as if they were old friends meeting for tea. Welcome to Alliance space. This is neutral territory, Zell replied coldly. You have no claim here. Actually, Marcus said, 14 worlds in this sector joined the Alliance last week. Their territory includes this space. So technically, you are entering Alliance sovereign space without permission. That could be considered an act of war. Behind Marcus, Zell could see ships from at least 20 different species. Some were barely armed. Others had weapons that looked crude but functional. And all of them were positioned between his fleet and Earth. You cannot be serious, Zell said. My fleet has 1,000 warships. You have 300 ships, most of them civilian vessels. If we fire, you will be destroyed in minutes. Probably, Marcus agreed. But you will not fire. And why not? Marcus leaned forward slightly. Because those crude civilian vessels you are looking at belong to 250 different worlds. If you destroy them, you will not be attacking just Earth. You will be declaring war on 250 sovereign planets. Some of them are council members who will demand you be tried for war crimes. Others are independent worlds who will never forgive the council for killing their people. And all of them have friends, families, and trading partners who will remember what you did here. Zell felt a cold weight settle in his chest. Webb was right. This was not a military problem. This was a political nightmare. You are bluffing, Zell said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Marcus gestured to his side, and the screen split. 20 different captains appeared, representing 20 different species. Commander Zell, these captains are all volunteers. They chose to be here. They know the risk. And they are all broadcasting live to their home worlds. Millions of people are watching this conversation right now. If you fire, the galaxy will see you kill civilians who are defending their homes. One of the captains, a telecon female with bright green skin, spoke up. My government did not send me here, Commander. I came because Earth helped us when the Council would not. I will not abandon them now. Another captain, this one from a species Zell did not recognize, added, My world has been free for only 20 years. The Council wanted to impose trade restrictions that would have destroyed our economy. The humans offered us fair deals instead. I owe them my people's prosperity. One by one, the captains told their stories, each one different, but all sharing a common theme. Earth had helped them when no one else would. Zell looked at his tactical officer. Ren, what are our orders if they refuse to move? Ren swallowed hard. Engage and destroy any vessels that interfere with the blockade, sir. And if those vessels include council member ships? Ren had no answer. Zell looked back at Marcus's web. The human ambassador sat calmly waiting. Behind him, 300 ships held position. Some of them were barely spaceworthy, but all of them were committed. You're asking me to retreat, Zell said. I am asking you to think, Marcus replied. You can force your way through. You have the firepower. But what happens afterward? Even if you win this battle, you lose the war. The Council cannot govern a galaxy that hates it. Zell closed his eyes. 40 years of service? 40 years of following orders without question. And now, faced with an enemy that refused to fight back in any conventional way, he had to make a choice. Fleet, he said over the command channel, hold position. All weapons on standby. Do not fire unless fired upon. He looked at Marcus. I need to consult with the Council. Take all the time you need, Marcus said. We are not going anywhere. The communication ended. Zell sat in his command chair, staring at the tactical display. 300 ships against 1,000? They should have scattered at the sight of his fleet. Instead, they held the line. And for the first time in his career, Fleet Commander Zell did not know what to do. Fleet Commander Zell withdrew his forces after 3 days of tense standoff. He returned to Council space not as a conquering hero, but as an officer who had failed his mission. The Council stripped him of command immediately, but Zell felt only relief. He had seen the faces of those civilian captains, heard their stories, and realized that some battles could not be won with weapons. But while Zell faced military tribunals, something far more dangerous was brewing in the Council archives. Investigator Prime Kira was a legend in her field. For 60 years, she had served the Council as its chief historian and investigator. Her species, the Valorians, lived for 3 centuries and devoted their lives to the pursuit of truth. Kira had exposed corruption, prevented wars, and saved the Council from collapse twice before. She was respected. She was trusted. And she had just discovered that everything she believed was a lie. It started with a simple question. Why did the humans have access to sealed historical records? The files they released showing Council security breaches should not have existed. They were supposedly destroyed centuries ago, yet humanity had perfect copies. Kira dove into the deepest archives, the sealed vaults that even most Council members did not know existed. What she found made her physically ill. 3,000 years ago, when the Galactic Council was founded, the official history said that all member species had joined voluntarily, seeking peace and cooperation. The founding documents spoke of enlightenment, of species coming together to build a better galaxy. It was propaganda, the real documents. Hidden in encrypted files that required 3 different authorization codes to access, told a different story. The Council had been born in conquest. The Althean Collective and 5 other powerful civilizations had formed a military alliance and conquered dozens of smaller species. Those species were given a choice: join the Council and accept Althean leadership, or be destroyed. Most chose survival. Over the following centuries, the Council refined its methods. Outright conquest gave way to economic pressure and political manipulation. New species were encouraged to join voluntarily. Those who refused faced isolation, sanctions, and eventually military intervention. The methods changed, but the core truth remained. The Council was not an alliance of equals. It was an empire disguised as a democracy. Kira compiled everything into a single report: the founding wars, the forced annexations, the economic blackmail, the assassinations of leaders who resisted too effectively, 3,000 years of carefully hidden crimes. She knew what she had to do. But she also knew it would destroy her life. That evening, Kira sent an encrypted message to Ambassador Rachel Torres. The message contained all her evidence and a single request: make it public, and do it through a panel of experts from multiple species. The truth needed to come from more than just humans. Rachel received the message and immediately contacted Marcus. They worked through the night, assembling a panel of historians, legal scholars, and philosophers from 20 different species. None of them were human. That was important. This could not look like human propaganda. The broadcast began at noon, Council Standard Time. Billions across the galaxy tuned in, expecting another political speech. Instead, they got a history lesson that shattered their understanding of galactic civilization. Professor Teln, a Vryn scholar, respected across multiple worlds, spoke first. We have examined documents provided by Investigator Prime Kira of the Council Historical Division. These documents have been authenticated by independent experts from 12 different species. What we are about to share is not opinion. It is historical fact, verified through primary sources. For 2 hours, the panel walked through the evidence. They showed battle records from the founding wars. They displayed messages from conquered leaders begging for mercy. They read transcripts of council meetings where economic sanctions were designed specifically to force compliance from independent worlds. One document proved particularly damaging. It was a memo from an Althean High Chancellor dated 2,000 years ago. The relevant passage was read aloud by Professor Telin. We must maintain the fiction of voluntary membership. Species join more easily when they believe they have a choice, even if that choice is an illusion. Ensure that all official histories emphasize coup, erasure, and downplay the necessary force. Used in our early years, Galaxy watched in, stunned silence as their entire understanding of history crumbled. High Chancellor Vrix appeared on news networks within an hour of the broadcast, his shimmer skin flickering with rage. These documents are fabricated. Humanity has created false evidence to justify their rebellion. But Investigator Prime Kira was already one step ahead. She appeared on her own broadcast, standing in the Council archives, surrounded by the actual physical data crystals containing the original files. I am Kira, Investigator Prime, she said calmly. I have served the Council for 60 years. I have no loyalty to Earth. I have never even visited their world. But I cannot remain silent when I discover that my life's work has been built on lies. These documents are real. I verified them personally, and I can no longer serve an organization founded on conquest and maintained through deception. She removed her council insignia and placed it on the table. I resign effective immediately. The Free Commerce Alliance membership applications increased from 200 to 500 worlds overnight. 12 of the Council's core member species, civilizations that had belonged to the Council for over 1,000 years, began openly debating whether to leave. High Chancellor Vrix watched his life's work collapse around him. He had devoted 2 centuries to serving the Council, climbing through ranks, believing he was preserving galactic peace. Now he was being exposed as the administrator of an ancient lie in his private chambers. He made a decision that would haunt him forever. If truth and justice would not save the Council, then perhaps fear would. He contacted the Kron Imperium. a militaristic empire that existed outside both the Council and the Alliance. The Kron had watched the chaos with amused interest. They had no love for the Council, but they respected strength. And Vrix was about to offer them something they could not refuse. Eliminate the human leadership, Vrix said during the encrypted communication. Do it quietly. Make it look like an accident. In return, I will grant you territorial concessions in the Outer Rim. 12 systems that the Council has claimed for centuries. The Kron ambassador, a scarred warrior named Gresh, grinned. You want us to assassinate diplomats? I want you to remove a threat to galactic stability, Vrix replied. How you do it is your concern, and if we are discovered, you will not be, Vrix assured him. I have contacts on Earth. They will provide intelligence on the human leaders' locations and security protocols. The Kron accepted. Their death squads were the best in the galaxy. Silent, efficient, and completely without mercy. 3 days later on Earth, Marcus Webb sat in his office reviewing Alliance membership applications. The list had grown beyond his wildest expectations. 500 worlds wanted to join. Some were tiny colonies with populations in the thousands. Others were established civilizations with billions of citizens. All of them had seen the historical evidence and decided they wanted no part of a council built on lies. His communication console chimed with an urgent message. It was from Investigator Kira. Marcus opened it and felt ice flood his veins as he read. They are coming for you. Not a fleet. Assassins. The Kron. And there is a traitor on Earth feeding them information. Trust no one. Move immediately. Marcus stood, his mind racing. How much time did he have? Minutes? Seconds? The window behind his desk exploded inward. 4 Kron warriors crashed through, their armor absorbing the impact. They were massive, 7 feet tall, armed with weapons that hummed with deadly energy. But Marcus was already moving. He dove behind his desk as the first energy blast scorched the air where he had been standing. His hand slapped the emergency button hidden beneath the desk's surface. Alarms shrieked. Blast doors began closing. Security forces were mobilizing, but the Kron were faster than he expected. One of them vaulted the desk, a weapon aimed at Marcus's chest. The shot never came. Human special forces burst through the main door, weapons firing. The Kron warrior jerked backward, his shields flashing as they absorbed the impacts. He turned to face this new threat, and that was his mistake. Marcus grabbed a chair and smashed it across the Kron's helmet. It did no damage, but it distracted him for a crucial second. Long enough for the special forces to adjust their aim and fire at the gaps in his armor, the Kron went down. The firefight lasted 90 seconds. When it was over, all 4 Kron warriors were captured alive, wounded but breathing. And Marcus stood among the wreckage of his office, realizing how close he had come to death. Colonel Hayes, commander of the Special Forces team, approached. Sir, we need to move you to a secure location. Marcus shook his head. Not yet. First, I want answers from them. The interrogation did not take long. The Kron were warriors, not spies. They had no loyalty to anyone except their own empire, and when faced with the choice between protecting High Chancellor Vrix or saving themselves, they chose survival. Within 6 hours, Marcus had a complete confession. The assassination attempt had been ordered by Vrix himself. The Kron provided communication logs, payment records, and even the intelligence reports they had, received from their contact on Earth. That contact turned out to be a low-level administrative officer who had gambling debts and thought selling information to aliens was a victimless crime. He was arrested before midnight. Marcus sat in the secure military bunker beneath Geneva, watching the recording of the confession for the 3rd time. Ambassador Rachel Torres sat across from him, her face grim. We have to release this, she said. The galaxy needs to know. Agreed, Marcus replied. But carefully. We cannot make it look like we are gloating. This is not about revenge. This is about justice. They crafted the announcement together. The evidence was presented without commentary, no editorializing, no accusations beyond the facts. The Kron confessions were played in full. The payment records were displayed. The communication logs between Vrix and the Krone ambassador were shown. Verbatim, the broadcast reached every corner of the galaxy. Simultaneously, High Chancellor Vrix was in an ANU emergency council session when the news broke. He watched his career, his reputation, and his freedom evaporate in real time. Delegates who had supported him for decades turned away in disgust. Some called for his immediate arrest. Others demanded a formal trial. Within an hour, a vote of no confidence was called. It passed unanimously. Vrix was removed from power, was placed under house arrest, and informed that he would face trial for ordering the assassination of diplomatic officials during peacetime. The charges carried a potential sentence of life imprisonment. But the damage extended far beyond one disgraced Chancellor. The Galactic Council faced a crisis unlike anything in its 3,000-year history. 700 worlds had now left to join the Free Commerce Alliance. Of the remaining members, more than half were openly questioning whether they should stay. The Council's moral authority was destroyed. Its military had been humiliated. Its leadership was facing criminal charges. Emergency elections were held. A new generation of leaders emerged, younger delegates who had watched humanity's resistance and learned from it. They were reformers, idealists, who believed the Council could be saved if it was willing to change. Senator Dax, the officer who had first spoken out against condemning Earth, was elected as the new High Chancellor. His first act was to request a meeting with Ambassador Marcus Webb. The meeting was held on Sanctuary Station, a neutral facility built specifically for this purpose. It orbited a star equidistant from Earth and the Council's capital world. The station had been constructed in just 3 weeks through a joint effort between human engineers and workers from 20 different species. It was a symbol of what cooperation could achieve when species worked as equals. Marcus entered the conference room and found not just Dax, but a delegation of 15 council members representing different factions and species. They looked nervous, uncertain, nothing like the confident, imposing figures who had judged him in the Grand Chamber months ago. Ambassador Webb. Dax began. We asked for this meeting because the Council is dying. We need your help to save it. Marcus sat down across from them. Why would humanity help the organization that tried to subjugate us? Because, Dax said quietly, the alternative is chaos. 700 worlds have left the Council. If the remaining members collapse into competing factions, the galaxy will face war. Trade routes will be disrupted. Alliances will fracture. Billions will suffer. That is not humanity's fault, Marcus pointed out. No, agreed a Vrin delegate named Tessa. It is ours. We allowed the Council to become corrupt. We believed the lies because they were comfortable. We enforced unjust laws because questioning them seemed dangerous. We are responsible for this crisis, but we are asking you to help us fix it anyway. Marcus leaned back in his chair. What exactly are you proposing? Dax pulled up a holographic document. A complete reformation of the Council Charter. We want to rebuild the Council from the ground up based on principles that humanity has demonstrated. No forced membership. No mandatory laws imposed from above. No technology sharing requirements. Just a forum where sovereign species can meet, discuss common problems, and work together when they choose to. That sounds remarkably like the Free Commerce Alliance, Marcus observed. Yes, Dax admitted. Because you were right and we were wrong. The Council tried to govern the galaxy. It should have been facilitating cooperation instead. For 3 weeks, negotiations continued. Human legal experts worked alongside Council reformers to draft a new charter. The document that emerged was radically different from the old one, the new Galactic. Council would have no enforcement powers, no mandatory laws, no ability to impose governors or demand military data. Instead, it would serve as a neutral meeting ground where species could negotiate treaties, share scientific research voluntarily, and coordinate responses to galaxy-wide threats like plagues or natural disasters. Membership would be completely voluntary. Species could join the Council, the Alliance, both, or neither. They could participate in some Council programs while opting out of others. The only universal rules were basic ones: no genocide, no slavery, no biological weapons. Everything else was negotiable. The proposal was put to a vote among remaining council members. It passed with 87% approval. Marcus Webb stood in the reformed council chamber 3 months after walking out of the old one. The room had been redesigned. Gone were the elevated platforms and judgment circles. In their place was a simple round table, large enough for representatives from 1,000 species to sit as equals. "Hi, Chancellor." Dax invited Marcus to address the assembly. Every seat was filled. Delegates from Council Worlds and Alliance Worlds sat side by side, some still uncertain about this new arrangement, others cautiously optimistic. Marcus kept his speech short. "We did not want to destroy the Council," he began. "We just refused to be ruled by it. There is a difference between cooperation and submission, between partnership and subjugation. Every species here has the right to determine their own future. That is not rebellion. That is basic dignity." He paused, looking around the chamber at thousands of different faces. "Earth will work with any species that respects that principle. We will share technology with those who ask. We will defend those who face aggression. We will trade freely with anyone willing to deal fairly. And we will oppose any attempt to return to the old ways of forced compliance and hidden empires." He gestured to the round table. "This chamber represents a choice. We can compete and fight, or we can cooperate as equals. Humanity chooses cooperation. We hope you will too." As he walked back to his seat, something unexpected happened. Senator Tessa of the Vryn stood. Then Professor Tellin. Then delegates from a dozen other species. Within moments, the entire chamber was on its feet. Not because protocol demanded it, but because they chose to show respect. It was not applause. It was not celebration. It was acknowledgement. An entire galaxy recognizing that something fundamental had changed. After the session ended, Rachel Torres found Marcus on the observation deck, looking out at the stars. "So," she said, joining him, "what happens now?" Marcus smiled slightly. "Now, we get back to work. The hard part is just beginning." "The hard part?" "Making it all work," Marcus explained. "We reformed the Council, but that does not mean species will automatically cooperate. Old grievances will resurface. New conflicts will emerge. We will face crises we cannot even imagine yet." "Sounds exhausting," Rachel said. "Will be," Marcus agreed. "But it will also be worth it. We proved that change is possible. That even the oldest, most powerful institutions can be reformed if enough people demand it. That is a lesson the galaxy will not forget." They stood in silence for a moment, watching ships from 100 different worlds come and go from Sanctuary Station. Human vessels flew alongside Vryn cruisers and Telecon freighters. Species that had been enemies for centuries were now trading partners. Worlds that had been isolated for generations were joining galactic society on their own terms. It was not perfect. It would never be perfect, but it was better than what came before. And for Marcus Webb, who had walked into the Grand Chamber months ago expecting to be judged, that was enough. The galaxy was learning what humanity had known. All along, freedom was not granted by powerful councils or ancient governments. It was claimed by those brave enough to stand up and say no to unjust authority. Earth had said no. The galaxy had listened. And nothing would ever be the same. Far below on Earth, children looked up at the stars and dreamed of the future. A future where humanity was not a subject species, but an equal partner in galactic civilization. A future they had helped create. Simply by refusing to kneel, the story of humanity's walkout from the Council would be told for generations. It would inspire other species to question unjust laws. It would encourage worlds to demand their rights. It would remind the powerful that authority without consent was just another word for tyranny, and somewhere in the archives of the Reformed Council, the recording of Marcus Webb's 3 words would be preserved forever. "We'll manage fine." They had it, and they would continue to do so, no matter what challenges the galaxy threw at them next.